Hey people, technical glitches, so I'm hoping you can actually hear me. I just need someone to let me know if you can hear the sound coming through here. As soon as someone confirms that, then I will get going. Because boy, oh boy, is it not an interesting series of events. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Yeah? All right, peeps. Hey, everybody, how y'all doing? It's your favorite fat boy, Big Daddy Liberty. Welcome to another episode of the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Oh my goodness, has it not been a while since I've actually hosted one of these? So I'm super excited to finally get this motherfucker going, man. Welcome to the Big Daddy Liberty Show, as I said. As y'all can tell, perhaps from what was a rather Kwai and Kwat vlog 27, my mood has slightly improved because in most cases, I think you've seen exactly what I was talking about in vlog 27, which is a president who's completely inept, a complete idiot of an individual who's a puppet. He literally is like Pinocchio. He's like, oh, I want to be a real president. Come on. I was actually in stitches watching the man deliver this stuck speech. And I can tell you why the speech was absolute trash. Number one, the speech was a complete Nothingburger. You could literally have put a McDonald's suit. Since the man is the chairperson and the owner of McDonald's in South Africa, you could have motherfucking well put a McDonald's suit on Cyril Ramaphosa today and have him rather serve you that Nothingburger, a complete waste of time. And what it was, dear South Africans, and this is the exciting part. This is what got me excited. This is what got me charged up. This is what got me motherfucking feeling the energy tonight. He was on the defensive in that speech. He was on the defensive in that speech. Let me repeat that for those who are just joining me now. Welcome to the BDL Show. I am your favorite fat boy, Big Daddy Liberty. Your president tonight was on the defensive. He was on the defensive. Can I tell you why he was on the defensive? The pressure. You could tell that the pressure was beginning to get to the presidency. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, pressure? What pressure? There can't be any pressure. But let's look at the speech in somewhat detail. I'm not going to go into, hectic detail on this one. This is going to be a short episode of the BDL Show. I'm trying to get all my tech right so we can deliver on the show more regularly. Again, to those who are joining me, welcome to the Big Daddy Liberty Show. I am your favorite fat boy, Big Daddy Liberty. Let me just quickly repeat that if you want to support the show, if you want to support me in my work, as I said in vlog 27, you can do that by becoming a Patreon subscriber. Give me $1 a month. That's all it requires. Put $1 in the box, as a preacher would probably say. But it's that dollar that allows me to get out and about and doing the work of actually spreading liberty in these communities. This is one half of what I do. The show, the YouTube, the radio shows that I host across the country is only one half of what I do. The other half is literally traveling this country speaking to South Africans. But let's put that aside for a moment. Let's get back to the topic at hand. The delicious Nothingburger that your president has sent you. Man, oh man. And you can see the smile coming back because I'm telling you now, and what's it now? 10, well, I feel like we're saying Gozi with the math, but my, sort of 10, 14, 15 years of experience in politics has taught me this. Whenever a politician has to appear in front of your telescreen in order to do a whole host of explaining, in order to buttress a speech with flowery language, you can know two things as a political opponent of that particular politician. Number one, he's on the back foot and he's trying to reclaim the high ground in terms of how the public view him. If you listen to that entire speech of Cyril Ramaphosa, it is basically him almost taking a turn of, look, I know you're pissed off and we're really, really sorry, but my hands are tied. Now, he obviously didn't say that, but if you read between the lines, you can tell that here's a man who knows that he is receiving the criticism of the lockdown, even though the bad decisions of it, the unpopular decisions of it, are being made by other people. That is literally what Cyril Ramaphosa appeared on your screens tonight in order to plead, essentially, his case. To plead the case, to basically say, hey guys, remember, I'm the good guy. I'm the nice guy. I mean, think about it for a moment. Who appears on who appears on a live address like that to say nothing? Like, who does that? Who does that except someone who is under a lot of political pressure? And you've got to understand something about this pressure. It's from two places. Number one, it's likely from within the ANC itself, where those who had backed the Cyril side of things, for whatever reason, right? There are some that backed him because he was a new face and he was anything but Zuma, right? And not only was he a new face, he had a little bit of credibility to him, right? Because the public was sick and tired of Jacob Zuma, right? So that's one side of the behind Cyril group. The other side are just the pure opportunists, the guys who maybe even in the previous administration have backed Zuma to the hilt, but they knew that their own self-interest hinges on backing, or what was then backing, Cyril Ramaphosa. So there's pure self-interest for those, literally just keeping a job, period. Those two camps right now are likely placing quite a lot of pressure on Cyril as a president who literally controls state machinery, so to speak. So him showing face and literally having thousands of South Africans, granted on social media, but it translates nonetheless, thousands of South Africans asking the question, where in the world is Cyril Ramaphosa? Literally got to them. It literally got to them because their champion, the guy who they put forward to say, hey guys, follow this guy, he's the new nice stuff, had just disappeared completely for 3 weeks. No one had actually heard from the guy. Wherever he was, and y'all know I have an ongoing joke at the moment, that that Cyril now lives in Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's basement. NDZ is channeling her inner Buffalo Bill, standing at the top of that hole with the dog, it puts the hand sanitizer on its hands or else it gets the hose again. No, please, because I'm a human. Please stop it. I'm the president of the country. You can't do this to me. Puts the lotion, puts the hand sanitizer on its hands, or else it gets the hose again. Yes, that's right, Peggy Clearly. Keep barking at him. I'm sorry. I'm just entertaining myself tonight. Because it's cack funny, guys. It's cack funny. And I'm sure some of you are thinking, budget, Big Daddy must be bipolar. How can he be that angry in the afternoon and then be this chipper in the evening? But I can tell you why. I'm reading between the lines here. I'm looking into what we're seeing, and I'm beginning to see that you have a president who's very unsure of himself, and he's under immense pressure. Not only from the public, those two groupings that I always talk about on the show, the Blavity Blacks and the SJW Whites. All of them, most of them, who are in the middle class. Those people had been his biggest base, his biggest support base in terms of the PR war that Cyril likes to fight. What is that PR war? Well, it's the PR that has the media, the Blavity Blacks, and the SJW Whites continuously drive a narrative in the public space that Cyril's the good guy. Cyril's the good guy. Trust him. Even if excuse me, I lost my train of thought slightly there. I'm reading some of the comments. Guys, I will get to your comments. Please post some questions. I will get to those too. The Blavity Blacks, the media, and the SJW Whites, who are responsible for the faux image that we have of Cyril Ramaphosa, of him being the savior, of him being, just the guy who we need, right? Those guys now have literally been, those three groupings, the media, the Blavity Blacks, and the SJW, have literally been under constant attack by the rest of South Africa, mostly on Twitter and social media, yes, don't get me wrong, but also a palpable sense of it on the streets, of the reality versus the appearance. So where you have the media, the Blavity Blacks, and the SJW whites creating the appearance of this wonderful Cyril Ramaphosa, the reality which most people see, but he refuses to see, is that actually the average man on the street is saying this thing is absolute cuck. And it's now, I've switched to 4G, so I should be back. I'm gonna give it a second, just a bit of a second. You do notice though that whenever I'm about to get to them juicy bits, it's like that chef, Salt Bay. You know Salt Bay, the one who throws the salt in that funny hand little moment thing he does. It's like just as he's about to throw the salt, that shit freezes. Like Salt Bay, ain't you gonna say something? Now, motherfucker, I'm frozen. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm back. But it's always that weird little, it freezes the juicy bit. But anyway, I'm back. Guys, let me tell you, and I'll leave you with 3 thoughts tonight in this episode. 3 distinct thoughts that I think will help you with analyzing the politics of what's happening at the moment. And you'll partially understand why I'm so jipper. Number 1, on Cyril Ramaphosa, as I was saying before the buffering and losing me, the tripod of individuals or groupings rather that support Cyril and keep telling us, the rest of South Africa, that Cyril is so great, is on the back foot in terms of the PR war and the battle of ideas. Who is this tripod? Let me revisit. It's the Blavity Blacks. And I saw a question saying, what's blah, 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 blacks? No, it's not blah, 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 blah. It's Blavity Blacks. Now, what is Blavity? Blavity is an American magazine and media group that literally trades on the idea of blackness and black millennials. And basically, it's like the Vox of blackness, so to speak. So check it out if you want, Blavity in America. So I like to call these sort of trading on their race or trading on blackness rather type individuals, type blacks, as being Blavity Blacks. They're the social justice warrior types, the trendy lefties who then view that ideological prism of being on the left through the lens of being a black person, i.e. Blavity. So the Blavity Blacks. Welcome to that short definition of the Blavity Blacks, brought to you by Big Daddy Liberty. So that's one component of them, and they happen to be mostly, of course, in the middle class. Why? Because the ideas, those Blavity ideas, if you will, 9 times out of 10, they get that shit from universities, through that sort of cultural Marxist, postmodernist nonsense. We can have this conversation at some other stage. Let me quickly give a shout out to you, Mike22, homie. Thank you for that super chat, homie. I really appreciate that, guys. Every cent that comes my way, every time, yes, exactly. Sorry, Mom, Wife, Wellness. Would you consider Jamil Khan a Blavity Black? Yeah, boy, yes. That is exactly who I'm referring to. Thank you, The Brew, for your 14 Rand super chat, homie. I appreciate that. But I was just saying, they get these ideas, they get these asinine ideas from universities that literally sell. You have essentially these woke types who trade on their race and basically form a bit of a mob because the ideas are shit. Right? The ideas that they actually trade on are totally crap. Like, it only takes a few minutes of them talking to someone in the real world for them to realize, oh, yikes, the stuff that I actually believe in is total trash. And because of that, they form their own little groupings, their own little cabals, if you will. And yes, most of them are on social media, and you've probably experienced them. And very few of them will you ever find them in real life, in real society. Anyway, sorry, there's so many streams of thought that are coming into me on this one. Let me keep it concise. So I'm saying the 3 things that I'm going to share with you about Cyril Ramaphosa. Number 1, his cheerleading squad, that tripod I was speaking of, the media, the mainstream media in this country, the Blavity Blacks, and I've given you the definition of what the Blavity Black is now, and the social justice warrior whites. Both of those latter 2 groups, the Blavity Blacks and the SJW whites, are in the middle class by and large in this country. They have been the loudest cheer squad for Cyril Ramaphosa, even to the point of flat out lying to you about him, and I mean openly lying to you about him. Those three groupings have now literally been on the back foot, on the back foot, because the rest of the society is calling bullshit on the happy-go-lucky Cyril is fantastic narrative. Why? Because the reality of life under a Cyril Ramaphosa government is beginning to bite not only the poor, which it has always been the case, but also even some people in the middle class. Some people in the middle class who maybe were susceptible to that Cyril is great messaging are beginning to question this tripod, this trifecta, if you will, of groupings that have always been Cyril's cheering squad. And as I say that, Enigma 3, thank you so much, homie. I see your $50, homie. Much love to you. So that's the one point. Cyril's PR game is beginning to crumble. Now, number two, you've got to understand something. There have been very effective, if I can call it that, and concerted pressure groups that have placed pressure on the Ramaphosa presidency. Just give me a moment. Let me just see if I can fix this a little bit. That's fine, it'll do. Okay, Michelle Britton, thank you very much. I appreciate that, ma'am. I super appreciate that. Much love to you. On to the second bit, the second point. You have a situation now where there has been a concerted pressure. Wow, the brew. Wow, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I see your email address for me. I will get in touch with you. And Yaniv Heyman, I see your email address. If you want to get in touch with me via email, my email address is bdl at the Big Liberty Show.com. Let me repeat that, bdl at the Big Liberty Show.com. I will change it at some stage to reflect the new show's name, but for now, that is my email address. Feel free, guys, to pop me an email. But I want to get back to my train of thought here. And Yaniv Heyman, thank you very much, homie. I see your super chat, dog. Thank you very much, guys. I don't think you appreciate how awesome this is. Okay, all right, guys, I must get into these. So I've shared with you the first pressure point that Cyril has faced, in the last sort of 2, maybe 3 weeks. And that is the crumbling of his cheerleading squad. The sort of Blavity Blacks, the social justice warriors, and the mainstream media. I mean, you now have prominent journalists openly turning against him and his administration. So that tells you everything you need to know as to whether that new dawn rhetoric is still in play. It's not. It's very quickly eroding, and Cyril's not dumb. He does see that. All right, so that's the one area. Then you have the second one, which is the most important of the three, ironically. You have had a concerted drive of South Africans of every stripe beginning to find their courage, beginning to find the bass in their voice in terms of saying here and no further. Michelle Britton, thank you, ma'am. I see that. I super appreciate that. Much love to you. You now have a situation where there's been a concerted pressure campaign excuse me. It's mostly uncoordinated at the moment, but it's a concerted one nonetheless. You have, for example, I think it's RHK attorney. Sorry, let me just clear my throat. There we go. I had to get rid of that frog. And no, Cyril, you will not be boiling that frog. Slowly. See what I did there? Anyway. Sean, shout out to you, homie. I see your super chat, dog. Thank you very much. Much love. Much appreciated. The pressure groups. Now, I must get into it. You have these pressure groups, who've been placing a heap amount, and it's very intellectual and pointed type pressure. It isn't just sort of like, hey, dude, we hate you guys. We're just going to take you to court for whatever. No, it's been very sharp individuals who basically said, you know what? Now we're going to exercise our power to keep you guys in check. You had RHK attorney be the first prominent voice in this one. I think I've shared the letter that they sent to the president. And of course, there has been response from the presidency. that the presidency's response didn't actually address the substantive points made by the lawyers who were questioning the constitutionality of something called a National Coronavirus Command Council, the NCC for short, the same trash that is led by Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma and her pet dog, Peggy Cele. Yes, Peggy, yes. Anyway, I'm sorry, that one's not going to live me down. It's cut funny. Fuck it, I don't care how cool you are. That shit is funny. Anyway, the lawyers sent this brilliant masterstroke really, of legal reasoning and questioning to Ramaphosa and friends. And his administration responds basically with a personal attack against these lawyers. Oh, how dare you guys place, your pontificating ahead of protecting people's lives, blah, 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 blah. Political talk, basically. And these attorneys smartly, basically say, no, you haven't actually addressed what we're putting to you because it's a serious constitutional issue. But what we need you to do is to provide the rationale behind what the NCC is meant to do. Anyway, and the presidency hasn't done that. So you can bet your bottom dollar that the legal teams within the presidency have looked at Cyril and said, homie, these guys are making strong points here, which if they do take to court, may very well dismantle the entire little operation we have going here of this National Coronavirus Council, because they may very well not be a legal or rather constitutional basis for the NCC. So that's playing out at the moment, and we've got to support those attorneys. I can't for the life of me think of the attorney's name. She goes by the Leopard Lawyer or something like that. If anybody has her name, please. I can see Advocate Kasim will eat them live in court. That was a comment from, who's that? Bradford Lowe. I think one of them was Advocate Kasim, yeah? But there is the blonde, the beautiful lady, by the way, who's one of the attorneys, Erin Richards. I think the name's coming out here. Yeah, there we go. Erin Richards. And shout out to Erin Richards and Advocate Kasim. Really, if I have the chance, I will try and get you on the show. Let's chat about this. But I wanted to speak about you guys being Erin and friends, the attorneys, them being the first, really, to put a little bass in that voice and say, yay, what are you doing, Cyril and friends? That was the first big pressure point. And I think from there, the illusion of Cyril being impervious to criticism and the time all South Africans are backing him in the asinine nature of the lockdown began to break. You then started seeing other voices come to the fore. Even the DA, found a bit of bass in their voice too. And John Steenhuisen came and said, yeah, we're now going to give you guys this alternative of a phased lockdown so that we can end this and blah, blah, blah. Well, initially they didn't say end it, but they said how to unpack this thing in a phased way. And then eventually when he realized, he saw the mood, when he saw the mood of the country, he then came out openly and said, look, we need to end the lockdown. And really kudos to John on that one. I'm not going to give him too much grief because I think he's the only politician in the opposition right now who's basically articulating any view that is of the contrary to the president's lockdown. So the pressure, without losing my point, remember I'm on the second leg of my analysis, which is about the pressure being applied to the presidency. Now, couple all of that with the fact that Cyril Ramaphosa has quite a young team around him in the presidency, from his spokesperson to this other guy who his name evades me at the moment, Muska, who often writes in Daily Maverick as a political damn show in there for the presidency. You've got to understand that these are young individuals. So they are tuning in to what is happening on social media. And I can bet my bottom dollar that if you ran the analytics around how people view lockdown and what sort of tone has developed around it, the first 2 weeks maybe would have been people generally being positive and saying, yeah, it's fantastic. We support the president, blah, blah, blah. Of course, led by the cheerleaders that I spoke of in the first bit of my analysis. And generally, soul masker. Thank you, DK. So that first 2 weeks, so they were riding that wave in terms of if you look at the analytics perhaps of it. Not that I have, I'm postulating, and of course, I'll be open to being proven wrong. And then after week 2, things changed. And you saw it, of course, with it first being assisted by, in a formal sense, like your errands and your advocate Kassims, your DAs now coming with an alternative, et cetera, et cetera. On the formal level, that was happening there. But on social media, the tone was beginning to change. Why? Because in reality, the ordinary South African was beginning to feel the bite of what the president and his cronies, basically, in that NCC were doing. And I'm putting it to you that it's the young staffers in the presidency who have basically been the ones who prompted tonight's speech to say, President, there's a lot of hubbub on social media about you not being seen for 3 weeks, number one. President, number two, you need to speak out and address some of the criticisms we are seeing on social media about you. We are hearing on radio, we are seeing on TV about the lockdown and the actions of government. Because if you really think about it, Cyril Ramaphosa literally stood in front of you today and apologized on behalf of his ministers, who, the very same ministers, had defied him. Can you imagine how much of a shitty position you have to be politically, where you have to be the face of the apology of the people that defied you? The same people who, after you so bravely announced, yes, guys, lockdown level 4, there'll be cigarettes. Here's a nice little carrot I'm dangling of a cigarette. Same minister said, no, fuck you. There's not going to be cigarettes. We're in charge here. You're the president, yes, but you're the puppet. Same people who did that to him, he then had to grovelingly appear on front of your TV screens and apologize for that, basically. If you look at the latter bits of his speech, especially that the tone he took when he said, yeah, I know some of you guys have thought that what we're doing is irrational and blah, blah, blah. That section of the speech was literally speaking to every single point of criticism that he's ever heard, or rather that his team likely have ever heard and seen on social media. So that for me speaks to the overarching point I'm making here, the pressure that Cyril Ramaphosa is facing from not only the public, but basically his house of cards collapsing. So you've got to keep the pressure on. I said this in block 27, that at some point you've got to draw the line and begin to say here and no further. That pressure, you might not feel like it has an effect, but trust you me, it does. But its effectiveness is our ability, those of us who are in the middle class, the chattering classes, to also take that pressure and put it into the sort of communities that politicians respond to very quickly when shit hits the fan. And that's mostly poor informal settlements and township communities, the people who the ANC thinks are their voting bloc. But that voting bloc is also eroding very quickly because of how they've experienced the lockdown. So do you see now, perhaps, as I maybe piece it together, why there's multiple nodes of pressure that is beginning to see Cyril respond in the way that he had to tonight, where yes, there was nothing said in the speech, but the latter bit gave the game away of the speech, the latter bit, where he basically was apologizing indirectly for the asinine nature of the lockdown. And the way he did it for me in the speech almost suggested that, guys, it almost suggested, like he was also saying tacitly, like, guys, I'm also a victim of this. I know I'm the president, but hey man, they be doing this shit and I'm just like the guy who appears on the screen. Like that's almost the tone and the feel that I got from it, which only further lets me know how much of a puppet this guy is and just a friendly face, but a useless one at that. So guys, there's lots of pressure. There is lots of pressure, and you've got to keep it up. Because I've always held and said this, that the ANC likes to take what's called the path of least resistance, where they'll basically propose something to you, but quickly walk it back if there's like sharp resistance to it. Let me be precise and specific. Notice how it took them a very long time to respond when major organizations started saying things like, no, fuck you, you're not going to tell us where we can donate food parcels and donations of that like to. We're not even going to do it through you as the state. Notice how the state didn't say anything to that. They were very quiet. The same people, by the way, who weeks before had been saying, yes, look at us, we're tough, we've got the army, we've got cops, we're going to beat you down and impose our will on you. Those same people said jack fiddly squat when organizations like AfriForum and PSI and the like said, yeah, come try us. Come try to stop us from delivering our donation to the most needy. Again, it's what I keep telling people when I speak about how we analyze the ANC. The ANC always takes the path of least resistance. So the ANC backtracked on that one. That was the first major loss of the government. Yes, I know they're trying to bring it back now, insofar as formally legislating that everything must go through the state. But trust you me, the door to civil disobedience on that angle had already been opened. So they've lost that one, period. Now, circle back to where I was, and I'm going to conclude now, guys, because it's on the 31-minute mark. I'll probably conclude in the 35-minute mark. Circle back now to where we are at the moment, which is more and more loud voices and more voices with power, with actual power, whether it's legal or civil, whatever the case may be, are beginning to find a bit of bass, in their voice, and they're speaking back now to power. There is a lot of jitteriness from the Ramaphosa group because of that. So as I conclude and move on to the third leg, which is what we do now, what we need to do going forward, because a lot of you asked me after my very angry, and I still harbor some anger from that anyway, from my very angry vlog 27. Okay, what do we do, Big Daddy? What do we do? We understand the anger. It resonates with us, and I'm glad it does. But the what do we do part, and I mentioned in that vlog that I'm about to do some shit too. It's going to turn a few heads. But I won't share that quite yet because I'm still working on it. But what I will share is this, the one leg of what I'm about to do. You've got to start mobilizing people who the ANC thinks are off limits to people like us. Who am I talking about? In most cases, the ANC looks at what happens on social media and they think, whatever. It's those white monopoly capital and the clever blacks. They're just a minority. Fuck them. But you've actually got to shock the ANC by being able to mobilize the very people who they dismissingly call the masses, and they dismissingly assume will always back them whatever happens. Let me be precise and specific. You have an organization called the Free Market Foundation, which just this week, I think on Monday, joined a group of informal traders, an association of informal traders, on a civil disobedience campaign in Johannesburg. That right there is a narrative shift, par nothing else. Like, who would genuinely expect, given what is often said about organizations like, the Free Market Foundation and the Institute of Race Relations, who would expect that they would be standing in a protest, if you will, with a grouping such as the Informal Traders Association? So therein lies, if you will, in terms of what I'm going to do, and a lot of you asked, therein lies the clue, if you will, and I will share. Don't get me wrong. I will share once I'm confident of what I've been doing. Therein lies the clue of my approach, which is to build a groundswell of individuals who ordinarily don't have access to your YouTubes and being able to write to newspapers, being on radio. Ordinarily, these people don't have access to that kind of stuff. But their constituency is a very important one to the ANC. So what I'm looking to do, and I won't give specifics as I said, but it's in the realm of what I'm doing, is building that groundswell of those individuals who not only object to being bullied and harassed and assaulted and humiliated under this lockdown by these politicians, who not only object to that, but also are beginning to ask the question, what does a South Africa post-ANC look like? Now, as I always say, I have no interest in telling people who to vote for. That's not for me to do. But what I can and will be doing is imparting the values that BDL stands on, the idea of faith, flag, and family, Those three things mean more to me than anything else. And when I talk about faith, it's not me saying, oh, you need to be this religion. That's irrelevant. That's not what I'm talking about. It's me saying there are commonalities about us as South Africans across the board, purely based on the fact that we're God-loving and God-fearing individuals. We live by these values, and these values are common amongst us. And it's those values that I'm arguing, whether they are derived from religion or not. Don't get me wrong, whether they're derived from religion or not. Because I know there's atheists who are going to chime in on that, yeah, well, you know, the God delusion, blah, 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 blah. That's not where I'm going in this conversation. It's the values, more importantly, that bind us, that are often linked to our various faiths in this country. The biggest of which being the Christian faith in this country, the values that impart. I'm of the view that those values transcend the race barriers that are created by politicians. They transcend the class barriers that are created by politicians. And it's that which you tap into in terms of saying, will you stand with me if we fight for these values that unite us as South Africans? So that's what I mean by faith. Then I talk a lot about the flag, where I say I love my country, but I hate my government, and I have no intention of supporting my government, but I'll defend this country with everything I got. Because what I want for this country, my vision for it, is a South Africa that literally governs in the best way possible for the people who live here. And in my particular iteration, that's more of a federal state where we allow for our differences and our regional flavors to be the best way in which we govern each people. But that's, again, another conversation for another day. But I will defend the flag. I will defend all those individuals who live under that particular country. And the most important one, in terms of the values that I stand for, is the idea of family. And this you picked up from my vlog, that I get very emotional and very angry when I see the political elite in this country, when I see the securocrats in this country, when I see the communists in this country begin to take aim at family in this country. Because I can tell you now, if there's one thing that genuinely unites us as South Africans, is the fact that every single one of you will wake up and do what you need to do on any given day for the benefit of family. 100%. Whether you are that person who pulls a trolley day in, day out, putting recyclables in it so that you can make a bit of scratch at the end of the day, whether you are that mama who's at the taxi rank early in the morning selling acha and amakwinya and upoloni, whether you are that Fortune 500 company employee walking into your fancy office block in Sandton, every single one of those individuals wakes up on a daily basis to do what they need to do for the benefits of family. So why the hell would I not want to fight for you? Why the hell would I not want to fight for you? You are what matters to me the most. You are what literally wakes me up in the morning and I go, okay, big daddy, what's on the plan today to defend family? That's literally what drives me. If you want to talk about anything, hey guys, if you want to talk about the hand that winds the clock behind me, it's that. It's wanting to fight for families in this country. Anyway, so those are my three values, guys. When I talk about my values, it's those three things: faith, flag, and family. So that the ideas that I sell to people, the ideas of liberty, the classically liberal ideas, the libertarian, if you will, ideas, are informed by the upkeep of these three values. The ideas are what I then, so the values I share, but the ideas I sell to people. And I say to people, okay, if we can agree on these values, then the ideas that preserve that in our wonderful South Africa, and not only preserve them now, but will preserve them in perpetuity into the future, are the liberty ideas, the freedom, the idea that you roll back the power of the state, you break up the resources of the state, and you give it to those who are in need of a hand up. For those who don't have to be interfered with the state, don't interfere with them. For example, there's no reason why government should be interfering with and trying to direct the lives of wealthy and middle-class people. They're fine. Why are you interrupting their daily, we do what we need to do for ourselves? The people who you have to assist, if government is to assist anybody, is the poor. And there's various ways in which you can do that as you lead towards a society where the state is rolled back. I'm not saying that happens forever, because what you want is a middle-income country, rich, prosperous, property-owning, and free, where government plays a limited role. But I also recognize the country that we live in right now. So I'm not going to say, yeah, overnight, we just like dismantle the state and, yippee-hi-yay, let's just ride wild, wild west in this motherfucker. Oh, we can scratch. Oh, we can scratch. Sorry, I had to bring that Will Smith out for a moment. Wild, wild west. I'm sorry about that. I'm back. So I recognize that. I'm a classical liberal who recognizes the kind of world that we live in. And in the kind of a world that we live in, there is a need for the state, as you dismantle it, for you to move those resources in a clever way towards giving people a hand up, because they're no longer dependent on the state. And there's various ideas that I share when I do my tour of informal settlements and townships across the country. There's various ideas that I share of how we can do that in moving us towards a more classically liberal free society, property owning. So again, I'm not going to go into all of those things. I'm running over time. Let me summate and let me conclude. Sorry, I'm seeing Carl. Big Daddy's not seeing my message. What message have I missed, guys? I will get to questions just now, like as we sort of lead to quarter to what's the time now? Sorry, not even watching time. My bad. But I'm nearing the 45-minute mark. That's why I'll cut it. And I'm going to take questions now, basically for the next 4 minutes. So if there was a question, Carl and friends, please post it again, and I'll read it. Shalom to you, Kyle. I see you, homie. Carl, I do see you. If you guys want to repeat that question, please feel free. I'm going to take any questions now for the next 4 minutes. Jake Ellis is saying, dude, you really can go for longer. I like longer vids. Dude, I want to keep these episodes short. My vlogs can be a bit longer, but the BDL show has to be sort of at least 45, no more than 45 minutes. All right, guys, let me see. Question from Colonel. Practically speaking, what does the middle class approaching, sorry, it's moving up, the rural areas look like in uniting over a common goal? Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not expecting everybody in the middle class to sort of, flood the rural areas in order to spread this message. You have key individuals who are devoting their lives to do this. I have literally stopped my life, my professional life, my previous life, if you will, in order to devote my everyday to this. So at best, I often say what you need to do is support people like me. Support other voices also that are reaching out into this part of the world. I mean, you've got guys that I have on my show, Blacks Only, for example, Piaki Ganini, Dumo Denga, Zakele Ntembu. These are young, liberty-minded Black individuals who are doing the work, if you will, in the very sort of neighborhood and in the language, if you will, that most people would find to be a barrier. So support us, guys. When I say throw $1 a month towards my work via Patreon, it's every single cent literally goes in towards pouring diesel into my baki, getting into that black beast called Ufasimba, by the way, yes, and traveling all over the country to speak to these groupings. I'm invited a lot by Stockfelds, Black Stockfelds. When they're having their AGM, they'll say, Big Daddy, come through here, speak to us, homie. We want to hear this liberty idea. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Absolutely. I'm in the back, I'm there. Even if you're in the middle of Postmas Dam or random other places, Kuruman, and I'll be there. And I will share these ideas. But it needs you, fellow South African. It needs, fellow South African, I like Cyril now. But it needs you, dear South African, to support the work. Actually support the work, because I am doing the hard work. I'm doing the hard craft. And unfortunately, you don't get to see it because I don't put it on the show for obvious reasons. Some people don't want, especially if you live in an environment where, you're being watched. Like, oh, okay, so Big Daddy's coming to you now, So I don't put these on the show, but it's happening, guys. It's happening. There are groups now that I have across the country in townships, some in East London, where you have young, liberty-minded individuals who I keep in touch with, and I'm now beginning to just share content and material and reading material with to grow that liberty side of them, because I've already sold them on ideas. Because remember, my work in terms of the ground war is to be in the battle of ideas. That is what I do. That is the bread and butter, if you will, of what I do when I'm not on your screens, when I'm not on your radio. So guys, I really appreciate, wow, Enigma. Dude, I must stop and just say thank you very much, dude. 500 Rand super chat. Yo, dog, I'm getting emotional. Thank you very much, Kai. I really, really appreciate that. Yo, guys, thank you very much. I super, super appreciate that. Um, but yeah, maybe to cap the point, guys, that's the work that I really do. That's the work that I really do. It isn't just the YouTube and the radio, because that's all shits and giggles and fun sometimes, to make fun of blabbity blacks and social justice warriors. I love that. But the real work is, and I often say this, if you're seeing my bakkie on the streets of South Africa, I'm usually driving into an informal settlement or a rural part of the country where even the bakkie sometimes struggles. I mean, I've been stuck in like mud so many times now. Anyway, um, you know, and I'm talking to people who ordinarily are forgotten by sometimes our side of the argument, who are often in ivory towers and very academic with issues of freedom and liberty. We often we have these academic debates sometimes, um, and I often say, guys, no, Big Daddy Liberty is the street fighter of classical liberalism. I'm on the street and I'm going to do it there. You're literally going to find me in an informal settlement weaving through shacks. You're literally going to find me in the township entering a four-room house to speak to people who want to hear these ideas and are often the forgotten people. So that's what I do, guys. So I just wanted to lay that out in perspective so that people can understand what it is that I do. And really, like, even as I think about Enigma now, dude, thank you so much. It's you guys who literally gets me into these communities. So if you can, please feel free. Just $1 a month on Patreon. But those dollars add up as my audience grows and as people understand what I'm doing. Shout out to you, sweet Art Bloemfontein. Please come to Bloemfontein, absolutely. If it wasn't for the lockdown, actually, I was going to be in Bloem because I was in George a day before it. Let me see if there's any more questions before I close shop. Big Daddy, did you hear about the Zuma son with a warehouse full of booze and illegal cigarettes? News hasn't reported it. I think it has been in the news. I'm not sure. Maybe not as widespread. I agree with you. But again, it's a serious indictment, isn't it? If it's true, of course. Like, this is all allegations, because the allegations were there was like tons of like illicit cigarettes. And again, I hate calling it illicit because there's no such thing as an illicit cigarette. But that's a discussion for another day. I'm going to have it with Ivo Fechter. Shout out to you, Ivo, if you're watching, because we often talk about, there being illicit booze or illicit cigarettes. All that really means is cigarettes and booze that the taxman doesn't put his hands on. And if you're basically raising taxes, i.e. sin taxes, and making it unaffordable for some people to trade these wares, then yes, of course there'll be a illicit market that develops. It's what happens when you ban things. A black market of them develops, whether it's a partial black market because the market's open but it's heavily taxed, or a complete black market because the item itself is banned. Again, the record of history is absolutely crystal clear in how this develops and why it develops. But again, as I said, discussions for another day. I'll have some really smart chats on the show for us to talk about this. But guys, let me see if there's any other questions, and then I will wrap it up. Secret life of creatures. Question: why are they digging up our entire pavement in our entire community? Do you know, sir or ma'am? I don't know. I don't. I don't. Maybe talk to the people doing the digging. I'm not sure. Joe Emilio, shout out to you, Joe. Hey man, you've been sharing my videos. Thanks, homie. I do see you. I made a video about race. Can I send it to you? Yes, absolutely, dude. Just tag me in the video and I'll happily share it. Joe is one of the, I think he's a Cape Townian, and he really does share my material. Guys, I really appreciate every single one of you who share my stuff, who like my stuff, who get my name out there. Like, it is because of you that I'm literally able to grow my audience and have more South Africans listen to me, share my ideas, and actually begin to grow the ideas of liberty. Sorry, let's see. What made you start this channel, The Brew? And another question is, check your Facebook. Oh, Carl. Okay, cool, dude. I'll check. What made me start the channel? I was hatful. That's the simplest way of putting it. I was hatful of the mainstream media, of these individuals who are clearly steeped in the language of the left, steeped in the language of being race merchants, and literally selling bullshit to people and misinforming the public. I got really sick of that because in my previous life, and I'm not afraid to share this, I used to be a spokesperson under Helen Zille's administration And I used to obviously work with media as my day-to-day daily bread. And I just got sick of these people and the twisting of the truth. And it kind of makes you think they hold all this power, but they literally shit on citizens by lying to them. I mean, just look at how some of these news anchors have been acting. Some of them openly supporting the state. I mean, that's not the role of government. Excuse me, that's not the role of media. The media is meant to be the fourth estate that holds those who wield state power to check, and they don't do that. So I just said, fuck it. I'm giving up the nice trappings, if you will, of being in formal party politics and government, earning those fat government salaries. And I said, I can't live this lie for two reasons. One, the DA, the party that I sort of cut my teeth in, were abandoning the classically liberal tenet that made me join them in the first place. Because I've been with them for donkey years. I'd been with them rather for donkey years, but I could see an erosion of the values or the ideas rather, and this move towards the sort of trendy lefty social justice. They call themselves social liberals. That nonsense, basically becoming more like the American definition of liberal and not the classical, if you will, definition of liberals. That's partially why I left the DA. And the other side of it was being sick of working with journalists who are just fake and dishonest. Like I couldn't deal with it. You have a situation where there are some journalists who literally see their job as being to peddle fake news, and I just said, screw you guys. Why should I bother trying to push my ideas? Granted, through the department I worked for, but why should I try and push my ideas with you guys who are pretty much fake news? All right, more question. Big Daddy from Lucy Lockett. How do you get out of this mess? Do you think there will be a civil war? Ma'am, no. I don't think South Africans have an appetite for war. You kind of saw that in the lessons that we learned in the run-up to democracy, especially when the ANC launched what's called the People's War, which was a purposeful attempt to destabilize their black opponents who were bigger than them back then. I do speak about this on the Loving Life podcast that I did. Just search for that, Loving Life, on YouTube. I speak about in great detail as to what the People's War was, which drove the country basically to the point of a mini civil war, especially in the province that I lived in. Maybe let me schedule a show where I talk about this in great detail, where I give you the ANC's history and how the ANC basically used violence and a purposeful destabilizing of the country to basically not only destroy black opponents, but also to get concessions out of the national government back then. That should not have been made, especially to a rabid communist and filthy lefty organization like the ANC. So I'll have that chat maybe in another episode where we go into that in great detail. All right, guys, let me see if there's any more questions. I know there are. I'm just hard to track them. Blah 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 blah. Pumudzo Mabirimisa. Sorry if I butchered that. The biggest losers are kids from poor families, and most of these families are in rural municipalities. Yebo, I agree. Parents who aren't educated and knowledgeable about most relevant things. That's not really a question, but it's a statement. I think you're responding to someone, HRV. No, Pumudzo, I agree with you. I fully agree with you. I mean, you have a situation where in this country, poor people, rural citizens, for as much as a lot of them do support the ANC, are the most forgotten individuals. And I tell you this from experience. Having traveled as BDL to rural parts of the country to address people. I nearly revealed the group. But there is a particular group that I've spoken to and now keep in touch with me. And they say, guys, they say, Big Daddy, you're the first person to come to us and actually speak to us about ideas, about a vision for the country. In most cases, their experience of politicians are people who speak to them about, do you want a social grant? Do you want a food parcel? Like, it's dismissive. It's absolutely dismissive. And politicians really show a disdain for poor people that's beginning to make them see now that's beginning to make them see that actually they're second-rate citizens in the eyes of these lefties. So when I come and I speak to them, and I literally treat them as the equals, as fellow South Africans, and I say, guys, here are my values: faith, flag, family. Here are my ideas, rolling back the state, taking that power, putting it into your hands in various iterations. And as I said, I'll speak to you guys about what I say often. You can almost see the scales falling from people's eyes as they say, yo, Big Dad, you've shared something which is absolutely like I can get behind. I may not have much. I may live in a mud hut and, I have a small plot, maybe a few cows or whatever, but back at BDL, I will give you 20 Rand a month. I mean, there are some groups that literally give me 20 Rand a month, guys. But that tells you the story of how these ideas, people are hungry for those ideas. But up till now, no one's been doing the work, the groundwork of actually going to communities without an agenda. That is a party political agenda. But sometimes that can cloud things. But very few people have actually been going into communities and saying, guys, those ideas that are usually in the realm of universities and blah, 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 I'm bringing them to you for you to engage them. Shoving a mic into a South African's face on the public. Shout out to you, Stuart Russell, homie. I see you. Thank you for the love. If you look at my channel, this is only happening because of the lockdown. The vast majority of content I have, the vast majority of content that I put out is me on the streets of South Africa, literally grabbing a South African, pulling them toward me, shoving a mic in the face and saying, tell me what you're thinking. Who are you? Who are you really? Because you are being misrepresented by the people who claim to trade on your behalf. Whether they're politicians or mainstream media, you're being misrepresented by those people. So tell me who you are. And then you actually begin to hear, hey, these people are not lefty. They're not rabid, crazy socialists. They're not people who see themselves as needing the state. These are people who are just like you and me. They have the same aspirations, but they just don't have the means. And they don't have, in most cases. Alicia Allison, shout out to you. I see your super chat. Thank you so much, Ma, for the 70 Rand. These people, when you talk to them, you realize, yeah, the maintenance itself does. We're the same, like there's no difference between us. But what they don't have, because historically these things have been in the realm of intelligentsia, these woofy types, are the ideas that they can fight for. Not a politician, not a personality, ideas, man, ideas. And that's why I keep saying to you that the 50% of my job is engaging in the battle of ideas on the street, if you will, in communities, weaving through shacks and speaking to people. So that's what I'm saying BDL does as his daily bread, if of course he's not being under house arrest of lockdown. Okay. Next question. Shout out to you, Neo Rain. I see your comment, homie. Thank you very much. Let's see if there's another question arises. Thank you so much, Mel Berg, for your 35 Rand. I appreciate that. Much love to you. Okay, another question from Colonel. Why do big business not take the government to court over this lockdown? That is a brilliant question. Why are they just rolling over and taking the losses? Yeah. On big business, people get very upset with me when they hear me say that Big Daddy Liberty is not pro-business, he's pro-market. Why is Big Daddy Liberty not pro-business and he's pro-market? And let me explain the rationale. You've got to understand something about big business in this country. As Sebastian is saying, and I saw your comment, Sebastian, and you're right, big business is in the pocket of politicians. Big business in particular are the sort of people, wow, Angie, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your super chat. 150 Rand. Thank you so much, Ma. But I was making this point, guys. I want to make this point so that we understand why I often say I'm pro-market and not pro-big business, even though being pro-market can and does often support business of all sizes. Look at how Cyril Ramaphosa, for example, talks about big business. He talks about them as being in a corporatist arrangement. A corporatist arrangement is one in which the politicians use their power and use the fact that they wield power, economic power, to decide the winners and losers in society. This is what we generally call as being cronyism. It's often mischaracterized by lefties as being, oh, that's capitalism, blah, blah, blah. It's not. It's cronyism. It's where politicians literally wield powers they shouldn't have to co-opt big businesses into being their friend, basically friends with benefits. So in order for big business to get what it wants, which is invariably two things, more market share, and more specifically, the ability to crowd out smaller competition by making the cost of business high, where they can afford it, but small business can't, they happily accept this corporatist arrangement, if you will, that is literally pegged by politicians. Robbie, thank you so much. I'm assuming Booty or Sisi, Gabonga Kulu, Swami, or Putwami, for Super Chat Yako, 50 Rand. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I don't lose my train of thought here on big business. It's why, for example, that a organization, I don't want to get sued, so let me not name it. It's why one of the largest beer companies in the world that operate in South Africa haven't said a peep about basically the irrational decisions that have been made by the state, because they know two things. Number one, they have a very cozy relationship with politicians. In fact, they fund and donate to politicians quite generously. And number two, the understanding that comes from that is that if I scratch your back, then in terms of the regulation and the legislation and all that, you scratch mine. Where you find, for instance, that we have legislation in this country which basically makes it nearly impossible for a smaller player to compete with some of the bigger players. For example, look how difficult it's been for small breweries to try to compete with some of the larger breweries in the country, mostly because of regulation. Nothing more than regulation. So the long and the short of it is, big business will never, in real terms, speak out against politicians, because politicians become very brutal with big business for those who speak out. Let me be precise and specific. Think back, I think about 10 years. I think it's been about 10 years now, because my homie, Michael Yordan, shout out to you, Michael, was still the CEO of First National Bank and First Rand Group, rather. Remember what happened to them when they ran a series of advertisements that basically just told the story of ordinary South Africans. They weren't running any political campaign or anything like that. What they did is they just put a camera in front of ordinary South Africans, and they said, "Speak your truth" into this camera. And one of them was a little girl who I think spoke about just how shoddy the education system is. Her lived reality of going to a dilapidated school and blah blah blah. Do you remember how vicious the ANC was in response to that advert? And bear in mind, nothing of that advert was necessarily said ANC sucks or anything like that. It just said, this is my reality. Suddenly you had a whole plethora of politicians, both in their political t-shirts and in their formal government roles, basically threatening F&B. I remember Gwede Mantashe basically saying, it now seems like corporates are getting involved in politics. I think it's time the government reviews who it banks with. And that's a major contract, which corporates, not just banking, but other corporates too, rely on. And they literally forced F&B to apologize for the truth. I hope you remember that. I'll probably try and find it. Huge furor at the time. Again, it emphasized the relationship that a corporate would rather keep with politicians, which favors them and gives them state goodies in terms of money and the like, and favor, political favor, than for them to say, no, we want a market economy where everybody can compete and prosperity can actually be shared around. They don't want that. They would rather defend what they have, as so long as they can kiss the butts of politicians, the same politicians who then write laws that favor them. For instance, a small business can't afford, in real terms, some of the labor legislation in this country, yet it still persists. Even though we know that it drives and assists with driving unemployment, big business would happily back some of these legislation, costly as they are, because they know they can absorb the cost of that costly legislation. Smaller businesses can't. And that's an effective way of preventing smaller businesses from competing against you. So yeah, dude, why big corporates are not speaking out? It's exactly because of that corporatist crony arrangement that they have. We should do an episode on that one. All right, let's see if there's any more questions as we near. Put it this way, let me cut it off at 12, guys. Come on, we need to get some sleep in on stage. All right, let's see if there's any more questions. I'd appreciate some Ramaphosa questions too, just to keep it on theme. But I'm happy to take these. Some of these are really nice. Imran Julius saying, please don't wear masks. It's compliance to lie. I've seen some data suggesting, both ways, being for masks and anti-masks. So it'll be an interesting debate to have with the fundies. All right, guys, I'm not seeing Bruce, sleep when you're dead, homie. Hopefully that won't happen anytime soon. My ass is trying to lose the weight. And as I'm saying, let me just quickly share this again. This t-shirt that I'm wearing is a 7XL. I had already moved up at my height, if you will, to wearing 10XL and 9XL, basically. This t-shirt is 7XL, and it is roomy as a motherfucker. So I'm very happy right now. I haven't been able to weigh myself, obviously, because the weight that I use is at gym. But even around the book, I'm happy. Let me put it that way. Like, keto and banting is clearly working. Anyway, that was a weird digression that I took. Sorry, I'm reading the questions on my computer screen. It's much easier. Ryan Henry says, South Africa in 10 years? The experts at scenario planning, the expert at scenario planning is my colleague, Franz Cranier. And I think what I should do is maybe schedule an episode with him next week sometime so we can have a chat about this, because he has some really strong evidence-based, of course, views around where we're heading. And it's bad news for the ANC. Maybe good news for South Africa, but definitely bad news for the ANC. And I echo those sentiments fully, because again, the data shows. No. Let me not spoil it. Let me not give a spoiler. But I'm gonna have Franz Cranier on next week, and we're gonna have this chat on the Big Daddy Liberty Show. All right, guys. Let's see what else is on here. Do you think Cyril is slowly being ousted and set up to fail by the top six? I don't think so, because they need him. I think they're just trying to show him. They're trying to show him political muscle, and to show him that you're not as big as you think you are, even though we need you. Because if you think about it, he's the face that's lulled a lot of people into supporting the ANC again. So if they got rid of him, and suddenly the face of the ANC was someone like I've forgotten his name because they've literally kept him out of the limelight. The deputy president of the country, the cat, his nickname. Fudging hell, I can't even think of his name. But again, that's testament to the, thank you so much, Mobi, David Mabuza. Have you never asked yourself the question, why have you not heard from David Mabuza? Why have you not heard from someone like Ace Magashule? It's because they know right now South Africans are on a fucking tinderbox, and you don't pull out your unpopular douchey characters to piss people off when people are already on the edge. So that's why the likes of your David Mabuzas, nowhere to be seen. The likes of your Ace Magashules, who often are very vocal, by the way, in opposition to Cyril on any other given day, but they've been literally hushed, in my view, by the ANC, because the ANC recognize, you've got to understand something about the ANC. Their political analysis is actually quite good. They understand politics really well in terms of how they analyze what's happening. The thing is, because they're so driven by ideology, what they do with that understanding, with that analysis, is trash. And that's mostly because of the script they're following, which is so trashy. But they fully understand public sentiment, and it's a masterstroke if you really think about it, for them to push people like Mabuza and Ace Magashule out the way. Let me give you an example of why I say that. In America, for example, Donald Trump has literally placed his second in command at the helm of the coronavirus. He was at the helm, rather, of the coronavirus response, because the guy is quite nondescript but likable in a weird kind of way, in a traditional Republican conservative kind of way. And if you have an abrasive character like Trump has, it's quite nice to have a calmer opposite of you to an extent, to play that sort of good cop, bad cop combo. Amusing as it is for me, but it's also smart politics. And I think the ANC is doing the same, only in this case, they're not putting their second in command in front of you. They're literally telling you to shut the fuck up, not be seen by the public. So wherever David Mabuza is right now, he's just been like, hey man, chilling at home, enjoying the salary, not bothering anybody. He's had nothing to do over the last sort of 6, 7, 8 weeks. Let's see, yeah. Angie is asking, are they going to boot Tito? I don't know. I really don't know, because Tito he's a loud voice and probably does annoy them in cabinet meetings, but he doesn't have a base. And that's the thing about the ANC sometimes. If you don't really have a base that threatens your opponents, they don't really see you as a problem. They're quite happy just to keep you in a little shitty position because you don't really represent a threat to them. Look at some of the other ministers, for example, who no one said anything when Cyril admonished them. Also, Cyril admonished them because they don't have a base. They're easy to target. For example, that minister who was caught having lunch, flouting the lockdown rules. Yeah, it's easy to publicly flog her because she doesn't probably have a base that can threaten a Cyril that puts a bit of bass in his voice towards her. But do you think he'd ever admonish a Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma? Not a chance. Not a chance. Let's see here. Do you think Cyril will now address us on a regular basis, or can we expect what we have experienced over the last 3 weeks? I don't know. I think his team. Look, if I put myself in the position of his advisors, because I've been in a position of advising a senior politician, I would have looked at tonight. Firstly, I wouldn't have advised my politician to do what they did, what Cyril did tonight. But anyway, that's another issue for another day. I think his advisors will look at this and they'll say, let's see how it plays out, not only in the mainstream media, but also on social media. And perceptively, we'll ask the branches on the ground what the feedback is to the speech, in the hopes of that first area of analysis that I provided at the beginning of this live feed, in the hopes that first bit of analysis, remember I said to you, it's the Blavity Blacks, the social justice warriors, and the mainstream media. The hope is that tripod, if you will gain an ascendancy again in terms of being the cheerleaders and the narrative drivers on behalf of Cyril. So the we are led types, basically, they're going to wait and see if the we are led types return to their little position of superiority in terms of the narrative. More too much. Thank you so much, brother. I do see, or sister, I do see your 14 Rand super chat. Shout out to you. Much love. And a quick shout out to Greg. Greg, who I don't know you, but I heard of you as being a big fan of my show through my broker. Thank you so much for the love, homie. I really appreciate that. I hope you're watching. Snae Zulu, thank you so much for the super chat of 35 Rand. Super love you for that. Your messages, you listened to me on Cliff Central a few months ago and came across your channel 2 days ago. You like the content, it's great. So glad I found your channel. Thank you so much, Mazulu, for that. I really appreciate it. Zulu. So I can't see in the images. I really appreciate the love. All right, guys, we're nearing 12. So let me see if there's any more questions that I can look into here. Jojo SA says Trevor Manuel seems pissed off with the decision made. Of course he would. Of course he would. Trevor Manuel is a guy who he was part of the ANC. The only great period of governance that we've ever experienced with the ANC was basically between the years of 2003 and 2007, where this country, almost in an unprecedented state, was experiencing 5.5% year-on-year growth. We added 10 million people onto the job market. Big achievements under the Mbeki years, where Manuel was the finance minister. In that same period, for every one shack that was built in South Africa, 10 formal houses were being built in this country. Big strides were being made by that ANC. And why? Because that ANC under Mbeki and his right-hand man, Trevor Manuel, as the finance minister, had basically pushed the commies in the party and the trade unions to the side. By and large, they had pushed the SACP and COSATU to the side and said, "You shut the fuck up as we roll out these more market-friendly policies." And sure enough, the country began to thrive to the point where the social grants. Now, whether you agree with them or you don't, that's not what I'm discussing here. I'm just providing analysis based on the facts. To the point where even the social grants were not being funded by debt; they were being funded by government surplus. And that is a massive achievement to pull off so close to from 1994. The election, you basically kill off all the apartheid debt, or nearly all of the apartheid debt that the government inherited. And not only that, you move our books, our financial books, to a point of a surplus and a humming economy. That's fantastic. That was a fantastic ANC, if I can put it that way. But that ANC was not going to last very long. So, of course, a Trevor Manuel, who was the finance minister of that ANC government, would look at this one and go, "What the fudge are you guys doing? This is absolute nonsense." I don't blame the guy. All right, guys, 2 more minutes. Let me take 2 questions. Max Fire, great show, Big Daddy. I'm also a fan of Loving Life. Cheers. Homie, shout out to you. Thank you for the comment. Joe, sorry. Would you be keen to come onto my show? Yeah, sure, dude. Set it up. Roll the dice, homie, and set them up. You've got my email address, BDL at BDL@thebiglibertyshow.com. Rain, it looks like you'll be the last question, Holmes. Should the DA use this opportunity to tackle the issue of Cape secession? The issue of Cape secession is an interesting one because I don't think it'll be the DA who leads it. The DA in Cape Town is in a lot of trouble. I don't know how much of this I should share here. Insofar as I think I'm going to have a separate episode on the topic. There's stuff that people don't know about the DA in the Western Cape, which is a massive red flag. So I don't think they're in any position to drive any new way of thinking. They're busy squabbling amongst themselves at the moment. I think what you need to get something like Cape secession going, including like my vision also of getting a free KwaZulu-Natal, a more independent KwaZulu-Natal in a federal state, you need okay, no, let me not go into this one. I'm going to have a separate chat on this one. And shout out to you, Jack Miller, and some of the other guys from the Cape Party. I'll probably have you guys on the show. We can have this one out in terms of the conversation. Wow, Brian Nell. Thank you, brother, for the 100 Rand super chat. And yes, those toll gates have been killing a homie. So I really appreciate that 100 Rand. I'll be using it towards diesel and tolls. Guys, maybe as I wrap up, a quick word of thanks to every single one of you who watched this episode. I hope you enjoyed the initial analysis and some of this Q&A. I'll be doing this every Wednesday in this sense of the BDL show. And hopefully when I get the tech right, I can start bringing in guests. That's been a big gripe. So if any of you guys are like tech gurus, please email me and help me out with this because I am struggling a bit. But again, big word of thanks to everybody who watched. Guys, remember, you can support your favorite fat boy. How do you do that? By simply dropping a single $1 every month via my Patreon site. Or if you can't do Patreon, you can always sign up to the Institute of Race Relations friends of the IRR crowdfunding campaign. I do also draw some funds from there to fund, my travel and the like. How do you do that? You're wondering? Well, SMS your name to 32823. Terms and conditions do apply. An SMS will cost you R1, and someone will give you a call and sign you up for just a 90 Rand a month debit order. That's all we need, guys. 3-4 cups of coffee that you would have spent in a month. But it's those funds that get your favorite fat boy into the fight in the battle of ideas and onto the streets of South Africa. So, guys, super appreciate the love that you've been showing me on the super chat. Every single one of you, I really love it and love you guys. I appreciate it, guys. Remember, as I wrap up, join me in the fight to fight for the value that I believe can build this country and build our economy, and that is faith, flag, and family. If you can do that, and you can then help push me into communities across the country, and for me to share the liberty message with them, then we can win this fight. And it's up to you guys to support me in this one. So as I asked in Block 27, who is with me? And as I say that, remember, never trust a commie.